Welcome back to the Infinite Intrigue podcast. I'm your host, Alexis.
And I'm your host, Nick.
This week, we are going over the Titanic Conspiracies. Mostly one conspiracy, but we mentioned a few other ones. Good job, Nick. Start a fight between the dogs. If you don't already, follow us on Facebook at Infinite Intrigue. And that's the same with YouTube. You can either do the at Infinite Intrigue or you can just type the name and you'll find us. On Instagram, you can follow us at Infinite Intrigue Pod. And on Twitter, it's at Podcast Intrigue. All of those are going to be in the description box below. So they're pretty easy to find. Last week, we covered the Wendigo. Week before, we covered ghosts. Now we are moving on to the Titanic Conspiracies. Next week, we are going to start a series, I guess, where we go into pyramids, ancient aliens. It's going to be a long one.
Yeah, we could probably go on for probably like 5 or 6 episodes.
Oh, it's going to be a while. Aliens. So we are going to jump into some information about the Titanic and then jump into the conspiracy theories. Go ahead, Nick.
So the RMS Titanic was one of the largest and most luxurious ocean liners ever built. It was designed by Irish shipbuilder William Peary and built in Belfast, Ireland. It was thought to be the world's fastest ship, topping out at about 26 miles an hour.
So fast.
So fast.
Such a fast ship.
Alright, calm down. It's a ship, alright?
Okay, keep going.
The ship was 883 feet from the stern of the ship to the bow, which is just the rear of the ship to the front. The hull of the ship had 16 compartments.
Hold on. Dude.
Oh my god, Bean.
You are so loud right now. Can you at least go to that end? Go over there. Okay.
That's a good throw.
Just keep going. You're just going to hear him eat in the background.
Yeah. So the ship had 16 compartments in the hull. Mm-hmm. And it was built so that if 4 of the compartments were damaged to where water would leak into it, that the ship's buoyancy wouldn't be hurt to critical levels. So the ship should still stay afloat. It may be an emergency, but it's not going to sink. Duck, get your big head.
It's just good. Hovering. Go lay down, Duck. Okay.
So that's what gave it. That's how people considered it the unsinkable ship. Kind of ironic.
Yeah.
But that was the term it gave because it was considered to be so safe because of the 16 compartments and 4 being able to be filled with water, and the ship would still be able to stay afloat.
So I have a few more things. The Titanic was the second of 3 Olympic-class ocean liners made by White Star Lines. The Olympic was the first, then came the Titanic, and then came the Britannic. There was 10 decks, and there were 8 for passenger use. The top deck, called the boat deck, held lifeboats. However, on this top deck, they could have had more lifeboats, but there was a gap so that they didn't obstruct the view for the first-class passengers. So this meant there was not enough lifeboats.
Just noted, there were 2,240 passengers.
Okay, I don't know if this was the exact amount of passengers, but it could hold up to 833 first class, 614 second class, 1,006 third class, and 900 crew. That was like the max occupancy. Mm-hmm. Not how many people they had lifeboats for, but the max occupancy. And you said there was how many on the voyage?
There were 2,240 passengers.
Okay. So the Titanic and the Olympic, the Titanic, like I said, had that gap in lifeboats for the view. Because rather do that than keep people safe.
Yeah, we need to be able to see the water.
Yeah, because it's not all around us. The Titanic and the Olympic, it's important that we know both of these, both held 20 lifeboats. Right off the bat, that sounds like way too few lifeboats.
Yeah. And how many people fit in each?
There were 14 standard wooden lifeboats that 65 people could each fit in. So that comes out to 910. There were 4 collapsible lifeboats that each held 47 people, so 188. And then 2 emergency lifeboats that held 40 people each, so 80. Altogether, this totaled to 1,178. So not even half of how many people they had.
Yeah.
However, the Titanic could have held 64 wooden lifeboats, so 50 more wooden lifeboats than they did. And because each wooden lifeboat could hold 65 people, so that would have been way more than the occupancy of the ship, and they would have been fine.
Yeah,
but that's not what happened. Sea trials with the Titanic started on April 2nd of 1912. This was 8 days before the maiden voyage. And the sea trial lasted 12 hours. The boat was driven at different speeds. It was crash stopped, which is a full stop where you go from like full speed ahead to like nothing. So yeah, full engine to no engine. And it took 3 minutes and 15 seconds for this stop.
That's not bad. On April 10th, the Titanic departed Southampton, England, and went to Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, Ireland, to pick up the final passengers before going full speed towards New York. Before midnight on April 14th, the Titanic failed to divert its course from they said it was about a 50 to 100 foot tall and 400 foot long iceberg. It ruptured 5 of the hull compartments, and it said that these compartments on the inside of the ship, they weren't sealed off at the top.
Yeah, there was a theory about that,
Yeah, so it fills the first compartment. Well, I mean, it said it ruptured 5, but that means that the water could keep flowing into the other compartments. And that's what said to had made the Titanic kind of go almost vertical because the front of the ship was going down so fast.
Yeah, so just an engineering flaw altogether. Yeah, they were like, "Oh, this ship's so great," and then they made that stupid mistake.
Yeah. Oh, should we cover the top of it so water can't flow in? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would, because the whole ship, it's split in half when it sank because it dipped so fast. Yeah. And then the weight of the top was kind of like Yeah. 1,500 people died because there was not enough lifeboats. How many people did you say were on the Titanic?
2,240.
And they had enough lifeboats for 1,178. But they were putting lifeboats into the water that weren't full.
Yeah.
They were trying kind of just like, all right, you're in, let's go. Yeah.
Well, I mean, with half the ship.
I mean, I guess you couldn't wait, but still, they could have the lifeboats could have stuck around and saved people who had to jump off the ship. I don't know. It's just, I feel like people, I'm going to trash talk the people who died on the Titanic.
Yeah, they're all dead.
Well, not the people who died on the Titanic. The people who lived is what I'm trash talking.
Yeah.
You could have just stayed and, like, pulled people into your lifeboat if your lifeboat wasn't full.
Yeah.
Also, if it's a wooden lifeboat, it can probably hold a few more than 65 people. You can probably overstuff it a little just so you guys stay warm enough until the other ship comes. Like, I feel like 1,500 people did not have to die, even though there wasn't enough lifeboats.
Yeah.
Like, some people still would have died, but kind of dick move to be like, nah, we're just gonna go. Like,
yeah, going out too far where people probably got, like, hypothermia and stuff before they could even make it.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure people just jumped in and...
Yeah, swam
went out
somewhere.
of there. Yeah, get away from the boat. The Titanic broke in half at 2:20 a.m.
Okay.
And on April 15th, both sides of the boat sank to the bottom of the ocean, which means that it only took about 3 hours for the whole Titanic to sink, which is kind of impressive for how big the ship is.
But, okay, if you look at the ship now, compared to cruise ships we have now, Titanic was not that big. Yeah, it was big for the time, but it was not that big of a boat.
Yeah.
And I've read about cruise ship disasters nowadays, and those, I'm amazed, like, that's a big-ass boat.
Yeah.
Like, I told you about the one, oh, God, I don't even know where it was. Europe somewhere, the one that tilted on its side. It was a whole news thing for weeks.
Yeah, what was that, 2016? Or...
I think it was earlier than that. But the boat was there for, like, years after, because how the hell do you move that?
Yeah.
It's a enormous boat. It was just sitting on the edge. Like, you could see it from the shore for years.
Yeah, because they said the captain wanted to give him a good view of the land, and then he came in too close. And he hit a rock. He left his boat, and then they sent him back to the boat.
I don't think he ever actually went back. I think he might have gotten arrested because he didn't go back. Because that's like a thing, like the captain is supposed to stay with the boat until all the passengers are off. That's like their job. But first lifeboat that went down, he was like, nope, I'm out. And he got on the lifeboat and left. And then the police were like, you need to go back.
Yeah.
And there's actually, I think it's with the, not FBI maybe FBI, because there were some Americans on the boat. I don't know. It was a call with somebody, not just the police, but I think higher up. They were talking to the captain. They were pissed. They're like, get back to the boat. And he was like, well, I think I can help better from the land. It's like, I think
I'd probably say that too if it was a sideways boat.
I know, but when you become a captain of a cruise ship, you know what you're getting into. Like if you start sinking, you're supposed to be the last one off the ship. Mm-hmm. That's part of your job. That's why I would never do it. But I don't know. I don't think the captain in the Titanic did that. I'm pretty sure he went down with the ship. I just think it's dumb. Anyways, that was a little off topic. But Titanic wasn't that big compared to boats we see now. It was actually pretty small. Yeah.
But big for its time.
Yeah, very big for its time. Okay, so one little conspiracy I have, which could be made into a huge conspiracy, is a murder plot. A very elaborate one. So some believe that J.P. Morgan arranged the sinking of the Titanic to murder someone. Now, J.P. Morgan was part of the Mercantile Marine Group, who kind of controlled or even owned, I believe, the White Star Line, which is what the Titanic was part of. And J.P. Morgan, that's Chase, right? That's the guy who founded Chase Bank, J.P. Morgan, Chase, something like that. Yeah. Anyways, he wanted to create a Federal Reserve in the U.S., but he was opposed by his three rivals, who all happened to be passengers on the Titanic. And they believe two of them went down with the ship, and the third one's body was found later. So they all died on the Titanic. So it's not that crazy of a theory.
Mission accomplished.
Because he owned part of the company that the Titanic was part of. Yeah. So he easily could have had access to it. There's no debating that. He had access to it. And if he really wanted to start this Federal Reserve, which could make him billions of dollars, and there was three people in the way, sinking a ship isn't that much for him, is it? No, I mean, rich people have done a lot crazier. Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. That one's not totally off base. I didn't look into it a ton because there's another one I'm more interested in. But the other one I'm interested in kind of ties into it. So we'll get into that later. Another theory is that a German U-boat sunk the Titanic. I believe it was that they shot a torpedo at it. Yeah. And
I saw that one.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a U-boat is a submarine.
Yeah.
Okay. So a little more undetectable than a big ass ship coming at you. So World War I was not yet in motion, but that doesn't mean Germany wasn't starting something, and that doesn't mean German boats, submarines weren't out testing things. They could have just been like, you were probably going to war soon, so might as well do this. And actually, survivors of the Titanic said there was another ship, or another, maybe not ship because this was a submarine. They said another, I don't know what word to use, ship, we'll say ship, nearby, lurking nearby until early morning. But apparently it wasn't one that came to help, obviously. Yeah. So it was kind of confusing. Why would this thing be out there, watching all these people die and then leave? So that one's not totally, out of question either.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one before.
I didn't either until I looked it up. And I was like, that makes a little bit of sense, actually. Yeah. It could have. I don't know.
Probably.
Because whatever damage happened to the ship happened underwater. Yeah. So I know icebergs go deep underwater because the top can be tiny and then the bottom's ginormous. Yeah. But also, if there was a submarine, it could have shot under a torpedo underwater and been undetected. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Another one I had was that substandard rivets were used to cut the cost of building the Titanic. So this doesn't fully explain why they would sink the boat, but this is a theory on why the whole thing sank so fast instead of only 5 compartments rupturing. And maybe they could have found a balance in the buoyancy of the ship still.
Well, the rivets, maybe the idea here is that if they used the really high quality ones that they were supposed to, the iceberg wouldn't have ripped it as easily, so maybe not as many compartments would have been filled.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So maybe if they hit the iceberg, it still
they just kind of like
fine.
popped off.
Well, because they said there was no spending limit. Yet Harold and Wolf, who were shipbuilders, and they're gonna come up later too. I have other stuff on them, but they used iron rivets, which are, if you guys don't know, they're like metal fasteners. In case people don't know what rivets are. But yeah, they're like metal fasteners, so you get like two pieces of metal that stick together. And they were 3-meter rivets used in the hull of the ship. And instead of using the iron rivets, which there was no spending limit on, but they still used the iron instead of the steel ones, which were supposed to be
obviously better.
Yeah. And so they were 3-meter rivets in the hull, and iron rivets are known to be pretty brittle in the cold temperatures of the ocean.
Okay.
It's a little chilly out there. But
if there's a giant iceberg.
Yeah, there were people that said when they hit the iceberg, a bunch of the rivets popped off of the ship.
I could definitely believe that.
I mean, they're huge, so you might be able to see it. I don't know if you can see it.
It was nighttime, though.
Yeah, that's why.
But, I mean, there's been people, I don't know if it was survivors that stated this, but there's been people that maybe not dive down, but they send cameras down to the wreck of the Titanic. You can probably see from that if things just popped off or if things were ripped or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it said that when they hit the iceberg, people said a bunch of the rivets shot off the ship. I didn't know if that could have saved the boat.
Or if there were better rivets.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have hit 5 compartments. But
yeah, that's a good theory.
Yeah.
You said there was no spending limit?
There could have been. I don't know the
No, I don't think there was a spending limit, but there's a reason why they might have been trying to cut costs on there.
They could always say that there's no spending limit because they want to make like such a luxurious boat.
Yeah.
But there's always a spending limit.
Yeah, you don't just have unlimited money.
Yeah, it's not like here's my debit card. It's hooked up to like the U.S. bank.
Yeah.
It's always like it's still coming out of the company, so they're gonna try to cut costs somehow, one way or another.
Yeah. Okay, now here's the big one, which is why we actually did this episode, because I've looked into this before, and it is the theory that the Olympic sunk and not the Titanic. Now, like I said, Titanic was one of 3 ships that was built. Olympic was first, then Titanic, then Britannic. The Olympic and the Titanic were near identical, and I mentioned earlier they both had 20 lifeboats, so that was a big part. The theory is that these ships were switched and the Olympic was deliberately sunk as an insurance scam. So both boats were owned by International Mercantile Marine Group, which was controlled by JP Morgan.
Yeah.
This is how the murder conspiracy theory ties in, because both of these could be true conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
On September 20th of 1911, the Olympic was passing a military ship when the Olympic made an unexpected turn. I don't know how you unexpectedly turn a giant ship. But the ships crashed. The Olympic made it back to the port, but was in pretty bad shape. Like, bad shape where it could not do anything.
Yeah.
So a lawsuit happened in this case, and the lawsuit found White Star Lines responsible. This lawsuit and the ruling of the lawsuit meant that the insurance would not be paid out on the Olympic. Because if you were the cause for an accident, why would the insurance pay you for it? So the Olympic was not being fixed, and it could not be used. So it was kind of just sitting at port eating money. It was just throwing away money, because you still have to put money into it.
Keep even the electricity going.
It's not working, so you're not making money off of it, and the insurance isn't paying to fix it, so it's just hanging out.
Yeah.
At this time, the Titanic had just been built. So the theory suggests that the White Star Line switched the ships. This way, they could purposefully sink the Olympic, since it was disguised as the Titanic. Since it was disguised as a different ship, they could, once they sunk it, get the insurance money for it.
Yeah.
And then they would still have a brand new ship.
Mm-hmm.
And this is it's a pretty good insurance scam, except for all the people dying. It's a pretty good insurance scam, though, for the company. You have one ship that's broken, one ship that's brand new. The broken one, the insurance won't pay for. So you switch them. You sink the broken one that is disguised as the new one, and then you get insurance money for that because it's not your fault that it sank.
Yeah.
That they know, at least.
Natural causes.
And then you have a ship that you don't have to fix, so you just pocket the insurance money.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, not a bad idea besides for 1,500 lives, but...
Yeah. Good insurance scam.
Yeah, good job. Good job, JP.
Good job thinking through that.
You thought you got everybody, but not us.
Okay, so let's start talking about the evidence that this theory could be true. Due to the crash, the Olympic had to be taken out of service for repair. But this also meant... Oh, I was going to say, you said there was no spending limit. So, okay, there might not have been a spending limit, but they had this Olympic ship eating money. So the company's running out of money. They're not making the money from this new ship. They still have to build a third one. So maybe they started cutting costs on it because they knew they were losing money so fast.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Anyways, due to the crash, the Olympic had to be taken out of service for repair, and this also meant that the Titanic maiden voyage had to be pushed back, which cost the company even more money. So by the time the Titanic actually did sail, I don't know how the company was doing. They might have been doing fine, but they lost a lot of money by this time. The theory states, a lot of people say the Olympic was far different than the Titanic. It wasn't that different. They could have covered the Olympic's tile floors with carpet to make it appear new, because the Olympic had been used. It had passengers and people on it.
Yeah.
So if you have a tile floor, there might be footprints, there might be stains, stuff like that. If you cover it with carpet, brand new carpet, you're not going to see that. So it looks like a new ship. Some who built the Titanic actually came forward, people at the shipyard who built it, came forward and said, yeah, the ships were switched, but they were threatened by the company. Yeah,
about that threat, I have that the same two people that came out and talked about the iron rivets instead of the steel rivets, Harlan and Wolf, they came out and talked about the same threat that was made. And they said they knew that the Titanic was switched, and if they came out and said that they were switched, they would be put in jail for 20 years or more.
Yeah, this would be the last job they ever had.
It would be the last job he ever had. And they had to keep quiet about it because it was in the Official Secrets Act, which must have been in the company when you signed on for the job. So, you know, when you're signing up for a job, there's all the contracts. Like an NDA. You sit there like this, and you just kind of sign everything. So that must have been reading.
I don't work for people. I was going to say, I'm going to start reading that stuff, but I don't really.
That's a lot of paper. The same threat was made to the surviving crew when they got back to port by a high person in the company and a high person in the government. Families, so it wasn't officially the people that came out. Maybe Harlan and Wolf did come out about it, but there were a lot of families that tried coming out about it when the shipbuilder and the family ended up passing or something.
Okay.
Because if the family talks about it,
they're not legally bound at all.
Yeah, they're not legally bound, so they won't go to prison. But if the dad or mom or whoever was working on the boat was like, hey, they switched the boats, but you can't tell anybody because I'll go to jail and I'll never be able to work again, which wouldn't be the best thing.
No, you don't want to go to prison.
So it was said when they got really old or when they passed, the families tried coming out about it too.
Yeah, but if it's a government thing, that gets shut down real quick. Yeah, or even if it's not a government thing, if it's a
rich person thing,
it gets shut down real quick.
Yeah. Thanks,
so
rich people.
JP Morgan actually canceled his trip on the Titanic very last minute, stating that he was ill. But just 2 days later, he was seen in some other place, just perfectly healthy. And yeah, you can get over a sickness that fast, but it's very suspicious. You're like a day before, like, oh, no, I'm very sick. I can't go on this luxurious cruise. And then 2 days later, you're perfectly fine.
Especially on such like a famous boat that's taken off. You'd think the owner of it would want to be on it. Yeah.
J. Bruce Ismay, another higher up in the company that built the Titanic, had his wife and children cancel their Titanic trip at the last minute as well. So these are two guys that worked together to get the Titanic. Well, they didn't work on the Titanic, but they were heads of the company that got the Titanic going. So he had his wife and children cancel their Titanic trip very last minute as well, saying they were sick. But not long after, they were seen on a holiday trip to Wales pretty soon after. So everybody, I don't know, it's very odd that the two guys and their families who knew everything that was going on with the Titanic canceled their trips last minute, both saying they were sick, but were seen perfectly healthy and fine not long after. That's very suspicious. That's kind of like, did they know something was going to happen that was bad? So they're like, we don't want to be a part of that. J.P. Morgan also had 7 very valuable bronze statues removed just 1 hour before the quote-unquote Titanic left port. Why would you take those off if you're trying to make the most luxurious cruise ship in the world at the time? Why would you take off these beautiful, expensive statues unless you knew you weren't getting them back once that ship left?
Yeah, that's weird. I didn't hear that.
It doesn't make any sense. And then the SS Californian, which I believe is one of the boats that came to the rescue of the Titanic, ended up finding coal in the middle of a coal strike. So they found coal. That's good. Suspicious because they were in the middle of a coal strike. And even more suspicious is that they had no passengers when it left London. If you find coal in the middle of a coal strike, it's going to be expensive. And you're going to do the best you can to make money off of that voyage, which means selling tickets and bringing people across the Atlantic. However, they had no passengers when it left London, even though there was a lot of people who wanted to cross the Atlantic. So they would have been able to sell tickets, make a lot of money, but they didn't do that. The only thing that was on the ship was a cargo of blankets and warm clothes. Got coal during a coal strike, expensive, sold no tickets, and only brought blankets and warm clothes. Why would they do that unless they were set up to help a sinking ship? They needed the room, they needed the blankets, they needed the clothes. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's weird.
The quote-unquote Olympic was taken out of service in 1935 and was broken down. Part of it was used for the White Swan Hotel in the UK. On these pieces, I don't know if you can see it anymore, they might have painted it, but these pieces showed the number 401, which was the Titanic's number when it was being built. Apparently every ship has like a number, so you keep like the pieces straight or whatever. Olympic was number 400. Titanic came right after it. Titanic was number 401. So why, if the quote-unquote Olympic was broken down, did it have the number that the Titanic used? It should have said 400 if it was the actual Olympic. And just to keep this straight, I'm saying quote a lot because I'm trying to differentiate, because when I say the Titanic left, I'm not saying the actual Titanic left, I'm saying the Olympic left disguised as the Titanic. So that number thing really confused me, because that's that's like a physical piece of evidence. That's not like, maybe this happened. It's like, that was the Titanic number, and it came off the quote-unquote Olympic.
What was the hotel you said it was part of?
White Swan Hotel in the UK.
We gotta take a trip.
So, also, all the Titanic ads, the ads for what was supposed to be the Titanic, only show images of the outside and inside of the Olympic, not the Titanic. So
it's probably planned.
I don't know. So it could have been planned, and they could have been like, well, all right, we're going to switch these out. That's Sorry, if they started marketing it after the Olympic crashed on September 20th of 1911, if they started marketing like, hey, the ship's going to America, like, buy your tickets. After that, it could have been planned. They could have only used pictures of the Olympic so that passengers who got on couldn't tell the difference. But the other theory is that the Titanic, the inside wasn't good enough for pictures yet because it wasn't done being built.
Mm-hmm.
So they used pictures of the Olympic because it was so similar, which lends itself to the idea that they could have been switched.
Yeah.
But also, once the Olympic did crash, the people in the company were like, well, we already used the Olympic pictures, so why don't we just switch it? They're not going to know.
Yeah.
Pictures of the Titanic do show more square-sized windows with like circular ones, like portholes under it. So the first layer it's not a perfect square, it's more of a rectangle, but it looks more like a square with circles under it. The Olympic shows skinny rectangle windows with no circle ones under it. And there's images of like the Titanic windows, then the Olympic windows, and then the quote-unquote Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. These images of the wreck underwater show the Olympic windows. They do. They show the skinny rectangle windows with no circles underneath. And that is not what images of the Titanic look like. It's very different. Like, you can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird.
It doesn't make sense. There's a picture of the maiden, quote-unquote, Titanic voyage that shows 16 portholes, and the T of the name Titanic was almost directly under the third porthole from the front. Pic of the Titanic being built shows 14 portholes and the T of the name further back. Now, unless, I don't know, there wasn't a lot of room to add in 2 more portholes. Also, in the picture where it has 14, it looks like it's almost done being built. So why would you add in 2 more? That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't just move the name. It doesn't make a difference where the name is. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, unless they had to repaint it on another boat.
Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. This is a conspiracy where I'm like, yeah. Yeah. Because JP Morgan running the whole thing. So he's losing money because the Olympic crashed. He has this new boat that's supposed to go out. He's like, well, why don't we just switch them? We'll get the insurance money. I'll pocket some more money. And to his benefit, the 3 people who were against him on the Federal Reserve Bank were on the boat. So sinking it would mean maybe he could get rid of them as well, giving him more money.
Yeah.
And then he cancels his trip, saying he was sick, so he has no chance of dying. His partners cancel their trips, so they have no chance of dying. It just kind of adds up well. And then they have the SS Californian ready to pick up survivors so that maybe they were hoping it wasn't going to be as big of a tragedy as it was. Yeah. I'm not saying they were trying to kill 1,500 people. Yeah. I'm saying they were trying to sink the ship and get insurance money. So they had this other ship ready to rescue people, but it didn't get there in time, or the ship went down way faster than they thought it would. And then this tragedy happened. Yeah. And it just, I don't know, the evidence, the images of the windows.
Of the boat, yeah.
You can't mess that up. That doesn't make any sense. You can't, being underwater doesn't change the size of a window. Yeah. And the White Swan Hotel having the number 401 on the planks that took off the Olympic, apparently. That doesn't make any sense, dude. That's like a pretty physical piece of evidence that I could 100% see. Yeah, I don't know. This is one that definitely...
And this one is one of the few conspiracies that
I'm like almost 100% like, yeah, this happened. And the Titanic ads showing images of the Olympic, nobody would have known the difference unless you told them. Yeah. Because nobody was analyzing it. Yeah.
Probably only a few people. Well, probably a good amount of people saw the Olympic.
But they're not going to question it.
They were said to look similar on the outside, too.
They looked real similar.
Yeah, except for, like, the windows that you talked about.
Yeah, a lot of the, like, when you Google it, there's a lot of things like, this couldn't have happened because of this or this, but generally, they're just like, oh, this couldn't have happened, they were far too different as ships, but they really weren't. Yeah. Like, there was a few things, but if you cover the tile and you make a few interior changes, like, you're not going to be able to change the outside, you're not going to be able to change the windows, and that's part of the evidence that we have. But... it wouldn't have been that hard, especially for, I don't know, $1 billion company who wanted to make money off of an insurance scam, it's not that hard to change this stuff.
Having a whole group of employees that are kind of threatened with,
They're bound by contract, yeah.
Yeah, and they were all, like I said before, they had the high person in the government and the high person in the company, letting them know again that, you'll end up going to jail and never being able to work again, basically.
I don't know. It's very...
Yeah, so
there's few conspiracies that, like, I love conspiracies, and I'm 100% on board with, like, learning about any of them, and, like, most of them I don't, like, they could be true, they could not be true. I don't know, we'll go over other ones.
Think about,
they're really interesting to think about, and there's ones with evidence where I'm like, yeah, that could be true, but this one...
Yeah, this one's definitely one of the ones that
This one has some of the most, like, evidence. Yeah, those statues too. That confuses me. An hour before they left. What were you doing an hour before? Yeah. Weren't you sick an hour before the Titanic left, first of all?
He was sick in bed saying, man, I really want to see my bronze statues.
Yeah. No, if you're trying to make money, trying to make it the most luxurious ship ever, you're not taking statues off an hour before it leaves.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's a very confusing conspiracy, but it's... I don't know. All the people who negate it, they don't really have good evidence to negate it either. Like with most conspiracies, you can say it's not true, but you don't have evidence most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we did that one because that's a conspiracy I really like.
Yeah.
We'll definitely cover some other conspiracies as well.
Let us know if there's any that you want us to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, send us a message on any of the social medias. You know what they are. I forget which one's on Impod.
Yeah, I think we're all done though.
Yeah.
So if you don't already, follow us at Infinite Intrigue on Facebook and YouTube, Infinite Intrigue Pod on Instagram, and Podcast Intrigue on Twitter. Post a lot on there. We post whenever there's new episodes, post stories on there, and
we try to keep up with like news coming out, sightings of things, and yeah, they're fun to research, and we'll end up posting them on our accounts too.
Yeah, and like Nick said, if you have anything you want us to cover, you can send a message. Yep. Next week we are jumping into pyramids, and then from that we're diving into ancient aliens because that connects, and that's something I'm obsessed with.
It's fun.
And then from there, we're going into like modern alien beliefs and then experiences, abductions, that kind of thing. So there's going to be a few episodes. Yeah.
When we started dating about 8 years ago, we talk about aliens sometimes because we used to watch like Ancient Aliens and stuff. And we were like, I could believe something's up there. And, a lot of people we know are like, no. And was it like 2 years ago or something? The government's like, there's something out there.
We don't know what's out there, dude. And I was like, oh, cool.
Put on your aluminum foil hat, honey.
Yeah. I'm ready.
Yeah. But we'll dive into that, and they'll probably go for like 4 episodes at least. Yeah.
Ancient Aliens is going to be a long part of it. Not the show, just research on
Well, that show's pretty long, too. It's a good show.
Yeah.
But
it's worth the watch.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you for going over the conspiracy of the Titanic with us. If you didn't already, last week was the Wendigo. You can watch that. And before that, we went over ghosts.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thanks for joining us.